Peace, Shoshana. um, so this is structural. I felt the need to record it because it just seemed apropos, right? So, what key tenets of structural family therapy did you observe in Aponte's work with the family? Um, for sure, acknowledgement of the boundaries and the restructuring that would be required in order to yield different results as far as the boundaries that they thought that they had set. The power in reference to um, the father's exchange with Pamela versus the mother's exchange with Pamela, and the father's exchange being a little more directive, a little more guiding and not dismissive. So the daughter seemed to gravitate more towards the father. And also, he was more of the disciplinarian, and she seemed to respect that more and um, seemed to not really deal with her mother because her mother, yeah, just didn't seem to be the stronger, kind of avoided, didn't deal, was judgmental. So there were aspects um, of her mother that she seemed to resent, and the father brought that up. How did he go about joining with the family in this one off session? That part I actually thought was really interesting because I noticed that at the beginning of the session, he was very much the quiet observer, on the outside looking in, and then slowly as the session progressed, he went from being that silent observer on the outside looking in to stepping in the door, and now he was a neighbor, and then he was a closer neighbor, and then he became like a best friend who can say, well, if you don't mind me saying, and then he became like the uncle, and then he became like the elder grandfather who just, doesn't have a filter and is like, listen, you're spoiled and you need to do this, and, it would be helpful if you do this, and, stop saying you're going to try and just do it and be consistent and just commit. So that's how it was like a gradual uh, movement, from his start to the end of the session. What tools or perspectives did you find most helpful? I appreciated him asking, Pamela how her parents could help her, and assisting her with posing the question, returning the power, to her, because it was clear that, she was uh, she was a child, and um, in being a child, probably felt a little helpless in the situation. Um, so I think returning the power back to her, letting her know that she had a choice in this, and that she could say what it is that she needed, and that would kind of be the grounding force in changing their family dynamic, was really powerful. Um, was there anything he did or said which brought up a sense of resistance in you as you watched? Language. I don't know that I would. I know that there would be a great deal of reframing for me. I mean, yes, Pamela uh, referencing herself, in reference to herself as a spoiled brat, is, indicative of how she sees herself. But I would have offered a little bit of reframing, and maybe that might have been where EXA would have come in for me. Well, you said spoiled brat, talk to me about what that looks like. Or, maybe having something that she could show me what that looks like, or giving her some supplies or something to work with really quickly. Like, what does that look like? Or, or giving her something and like, well, what does that, and what the word spoiled to me just is something that can no longer be used, and a brat is a nuisance, or someone who is inconsolable and belligerent and um, being an irritant. And that's never any language that I think I would ever use. Um, and yeah, I just wouldn't feel comfortable. So that was something that was something that was there was definitely resistance with the language. Um, do you think an EXA activity might be helpful for this family? Why not? If yes, what activity might you try and why? Yes, I think EXA is always an option and should always be offered. It I think that it allows the person to go inside of their inner world and really express from a place that is oftentimes hidden, and just to give a different meaning to what's going on. There was a lot going on with Pamela. Um, just not being able to keep her hands still, and she was doing this stuff with her hands, and her head was down. And I feel like if there was some sort of EXA modality introduced, that I would be interested to see what she would create. I would be interested to see what would come out as a result, because it was clear that communication was a challenge for her. So, yeah, and I guess what would I have used? Clay making is the first thing that came to mind. I wouldn't want to encourage anything, um, too detailed with too much instruction, because I could tell, like, emotionally she was just in a space. It was really difficult in the beginning for her to be in between her parents, and I definitely would have offered clay making as an option, because I don't know from her state. I don't know how receptive she would have been to drawing or coloring or even talking or dancing, or that just didn't seem. So I felt like something that she could just mush, and even if she took it and squeezed it, you know, um, it would be helpful. Um, what do you consider to be the larger societal context factors affecting this family dynamic? Um, I think socioeconomic for sure. Um, I also think that there is something going on with how the father may view women. Because when he was talking about Judy mumbling, he said, "Oh, you're doing the same thing your mother does," and I don't understand what you're saying. It was a very, like, almost looking at the woman as the child as well. So I think, you know, um, very dated in roles. um, yeah, so yeah, I would say that that's definitely affecting the family. And then something that Aponte didn't bring up until the end, which was like really like, whoa, like why did he say that before? Um, Pamela being the surviving child within a family where another child committed suicide, and she was also adopted. Those are big. That's that explains so much. That explains so much about her parents' unwillingness in her growing up, because then, they don't really have to deal with the loss, and they don't have to grieve. They can almost, relive raising the child that they lost all over again by keeping this one close, not um, creating space for her to grow up. And then, usually with adoption, at least from my own personal experience, you deal with so many different things, and they come up at times that you don't even expect, like abandonment and just not being enough. Why didn't your birth parents keep me? Were you not enough? Was it something about you that just it's always about that? So then that leads into self-esteem and your confidence, like all of those things. To me, should have been visited like that. I understand that it was about the pancakes. It was about her being able to ask for what it is that she wants, but a lot of reasons as to why she can't ask for what she wants and feels um, disempowered is has to do with the adoption, has to do with the suicide, and maybe feel like she was the wrong one that died because of the way that she's treated. You just never know, you know. So yeah, that was very interesting. So thank you. All right.